Morning. Yeah, vice chair with the gavel. This is dangerous. Kevin, I see you on there. You better look out. You're gonna have to wrestle it back from me today. I'm just kidding. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. It's cold Tuesday morning in April. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. As a friendly reminder to our non-EDC attendees in the room or online, comments and questions during our session are reserved for EDC members, along with our moderator and panelists today. So thank you for respecting that. We have a lot to cover today in our 90 minutes together. So I'm going to start off with the business of approving the minutes from our March meeting. Can I get a motion? Steve? Can I get a second? Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, well, thank you. Let's let the minutes reflect the March meeting minutes approved. Okay, moving on to the chair's report, or today the vice chair's report. In Kevin's absence, I'm going to keep my comments brief, but did want to cover a few things as we enter into the second quarter and the fourth meeting of calendar 2025. So far this year, the 3 EDC meetings have covered a wide range of substantial and important real-time topics. First, with January covering the State of the Union, in February, workforce demographic trends, and then last month, the county budget and tourism improvement district. Our topic for today of supporting economic prosperity for all, along with the future topics that we'll cover for the rest of 2025, address and support the 5 priorities set forth in the AED strategic plan, along with the EDC framework for prosperity, which, as a reminder, are the following: business investment, thriving commercial areas, tech jobs, small business ecosystem, and arts, culture, and tourism. Before I turn it over to Ryan for the director's report, I'd like to take a minute to thank 2 commissioners. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Brad Mason for testifying last month and providing in person his feedback to the county board as it relates to the proposed fiscal 2026 budget. Brad took a number of hours out of his day to provide feedback to the board on behalf of the EDC, and we're hopeful that the county board takes into account our suggestions. Thank you, Brad, for taking the time to do that. Sure. I don't see her yet, but I think she's on the way. I would also like to thank in advance Commissioner Janetta Brewer for serving as our moderator today. Janetta spent a lot of time preparing for this panel, and we're looking forward to an insightful and thorough discussion. So thank you for your work on that. Ryan?
All right, Nick, thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. To me, it seems like you've scared off most of the land use attorneys by just being here today. But Evan, thanks for having the courage to show up. Maybe you'll get a couple of minutes alone, just to work out any issues.
It's a brownie point.
Yeah. I'll do introductions to the panel in a moment, but just to go through a few things in our report. First is today I'm going to be leaving this meeting a little bit early because I have to get over to Alexandria. The General Assembly Speaker, Don Scott, assembled a bipartisan panel known as the Emergency Committee on Federal Workforce and Funding Reductions, which is meeting today in Alexandria for their second meeting. And this group, along with a companion committee in the Senate of Virginia, are working to kind of understand the impacts of recent and ongoing federal policies on the Virginia economy, with the I believe intention of at some point reconvening later this year to either pass legislation or provide funding to help mitigate any impacts in Virginia. I'm attending as a member of the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance. Arlington does not have a role today in this meeting. So Patrick Small from Manassas, who's the chair of the NOVA EDA, will give testimony along with several other groups. And so I will be happy to report out on how it goes today and kind of the direction that this committee is taking. But we have been actively kind of tracking this, and our board chair, Takis Karantonis, is going to be providing on behalf of the board some insights into Arlington and what we think the General Assembly needs to do to help us in this economic uncertainty. So just want to let you all know that in case I'm going to dip out here around 9 o'clock, just to be able to get over there. A few other updates. On last Saturday, the team here in partnership with the Leadership Center of Arlington held our Leadership Career and Volunteer Expo at the DoubleTree Hilton in Crystal City. This was a idea that kind of came together pretty quickly about 4 weeks ago. We had some internal conversations here about how we could help job seekers in our community, given the number of people who are now unemployed. And we quickly partnered with the Leadership Center of Arlington, who many of you know, Lisa Fikes, having gone through their programs. And Lisa did just an incredible job of taking her 4 staff people and being able to help put on an amazing expo on Saturday. I want to thank Tommy for being there and volunteering at check-in today or on Saturday. We had about 650 people register. We estimate we had about 450 come through the door Saturday afternoon. I won't list every company, but we did have about 20 employers from Arlington and the region attend. We also couched this as a volunteer expo. So we know a lot of people may not be out of work, but they're looking for ways to network. They're looking for ways to expand their network and meet other folks in the community. So we had a volunteer component with a number of nonprofits who were also in attendance. And then we also had resume reviews, free headshots, and 2 speakers who spoke about, the first speaker spoke about just kind of living through transition and living through challenges and how to be resilient. And the second speaker gave specific tips on how to kind of update your resume using tools like ChatGPT, LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. So it was a very, it's unfortunate that we had to have that here in Arlington, but it was, I think, incredibly helpful to the folks. And the feedback we got was that having the time to make connections, having access to resources and experts, being able to do things like carve out time to work on their resume, that was really beneficial. So we'll do some after actions here and take lessons learned from that. We're being asked kind of by a lot of groups in the community right now to help support events. And so to the extent we can do that, we will. But it was just a really great opportunity. And I finally want to just thank my team here. Many of whom are in the room were there on Saturday volunteering, had helped with the prep, had helped with employer outreach. So it was a really great team effort, and hopefully we'll learn from this and make the next one better.
Right, question for you. So you said about 20 companies were in attendance.
Yeah.
Right? So are there any kind of trends we can draw from the type? Was it certain type of company, or was it all different sizes and customer base? Or
yeah, so it was everything from large corporations in the tech and even still some government contracting spaces to mid-sized tech firms, to the county had a presence, the schools had a presence, and then there was groups like Melwood Apartments who was there, who makes a very big effort and push to hire veterans and individuals with disabilities. CoStar was represented. We got them as a new member of our community. Path Forward was there. There was lots of other groups that were involved, but it was a mix. I will say we did, and this is we had a lot of employers who wanted to be there but couldn't. And we frankly had some, and this is not a knock on them, but just you said it's not the right time for us to be able to participate given their business situation. So it kind of ran the gamut, but we will continue to stay in touch with our business community because we know there's a need for this. But I think it's a very business case by case decision on who's willing to participate.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. 2 other quick report outs, and then I'll move to our introduction of our panel. I just want to also piggyback on the budget. Thank you, Brad, for coming. Thank you to the Arts Commission Chair and our bids and partnerships who gave testimony at the budget hearing. And thank you to Board Member JD Spain, who's on the line, who helped kind of MC the budget work session 2 weeks ago. I think we had a really productive and constructive conversation with the board. And the budget will be approved on Wednesday. And I think AED will be well positioned in the next fiscal year, thanks to the county manager and board support. Finally, I want to also thank Charles for your work, Charles, on the arts grants. I don't know if you want to talk about your first experience on a panel. I'm not sure we can announce who's gotten the recipients of our new arts placemaking grant, but thank you for taking the time to be on that panel.
Yeah, I was happy to participate. I would like to say Sharon ran a very professional panel, and they had a thoughtful discussion and chose a couple of, I think, good selections for the placemaking grant. So thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll make sure we can announce. I think we're still working to finalize. That's our arts placemaking grant. This was a new initiative this year, $100,000. We do $50,000 grants to organizations to help pull arts and placemaking together and bring that out into our community. So with that, Nick, I'm happy to jump into the panel discussion if you're ready. I see Janetta's here, and so we'll give her a sec. I'll filibuster a little bit, Janetta, so you can get your bag unpacked. So today we're going to talk about the importance of equity and economic development. And before I hand it over to our speaker and Janetta, who's going to lead our panel, I just want to take a moment to let you all know about our commitment to equity. And really what that means for us is creating economic prosperity for all. And we know that communities face barriers when it comes to engaging in our economy, and research consistently shows that closing economic gaps leads to higher educational attainment, stronger entrepreneurship, a more innovative workforce, and greater long-term prosperity for everyone and our community. So when we think about an equitable economy, we think about helping everyone in our community, regardless of their lived experience or background, access the resources and opportunities, infrastructure, and jobs here in Arlington. And so we're working very hard to foster economic mobility through our strategic plan, and we have some initiatives that are working in the planning phase that we'll be rolling out this year that I'm really excited about. So today's discussion will explore current disparities and initiatives by looking at data, hearing from our expert panel, and considering the role of policy in building a more inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous economy for all. Janetta, I'm happy to hand it over to you to do introductions, or Cynthia's first to do our data. All right, thank you, Kate, for keeping us on track. So Cynthia, Cynthia Works is our most recent Arlington County Race and Equity Programs Manager. Cynthia, thank you for being here and for providing the data overview before we get to the.
Thank you so much, Brian. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you. For those whom I haven't met, and that seems to be a lot of you, I only see a few familiar faces in the room. I am Cynthia LaChase Torres, and I am the Race and Equity Programs Manager for Arlington County. I've been serving in this role since July of last year, following more than 23 years of working in the Historic Preservation Program in the Department of Community Planning, Housing, and Development. My education and professional background are concentrated in historic preservation, but with a committed focus on both documenting and celebrating cultural heritage and diversity. And I continue to enjoy many different collaborations with AED, including public art, cultural affairs, and the Convention and Visitor Service. Slide. In my new role in the County Manager's Office, I lead the county's Office of Realizing Arlington's commitment to equity or race. The majority of what my team does is internal facing, working directly with departments and colleagues to advance equity work countywide. We likewise are trying to build more partnerships with organizations, nonprofits, neighborhoods, and the business community. During this tumultuous time of constant change and fear, I believe that Arlington is actually better positioned than most localities. Our leadership, including the county board, our county managers, and department directors, strongly support equity work still. That is not changing. County leaders remain committed to this work and the value it brings to both our workplace and the broader Arlington community. We strive to be a community where all are valued, educated, healthy, and safe, regardless of race and other aspects of our identities, such as gender, age, sexual orientation, education, and income. The County Board's 2019 Equity Resolution establishes the framework for guiding us as a county government to address disparities and improving outcomes for all. Next slide. I wanted to highlight a few of these disparities to provide some context before the panel. The demographic data that I'm sharing with you is all readily available on both the Arlington County website and that of Arlington Public Schools. So not only is Arlington a prosperous community, it is also a racially and culturally diverse one. Our estimated 2025 population is 243,760 residents. The median age of Arlingtonians is 35.5 years old. Our immigrant population is quite sizable, with 21.9% of our population being foreign-born. Current year estimates indicate that 15.1% of Arlington's population is Hispanic or Latino. The next largest races and ethnic groups include American Indian or Alaska Native, followed by Black or African American, and those identifying as being two or more races. Next slide. But across different segments of our community, levels of economic prosperity vary. Gaps remain and fall along racial and ethnic lines. Household income and unemployment show disparities as noted here. The median household income in Arlington as of 2023 is just over $140,000. And as you can see, across Arlington's diverse population, communities of color have both lower median household incomes and higher unemployment rates. Next slide. The Arlington Public Schools student population is a minority majority with 59% non-white students. More than 27% of the 28,000 plus students enrolled in APS are English learners. To give you a sense of the diversity represented within APS, enrolled students speak 90 different languages and represent 149 countries of origin. Although the overall graduation rate exceeds 93%, these rates lag by race and ethnicity, as well as with students who are learning English. And 86% of last year's graduates continued to pursue their education. Slide. So where do Arlingtonians reside? In 2025, there are an estimated 126,540 housing units within Arlington, of which apartments comprise the largest type of housing unit, followed by single-family detached homes, condos, and then single-family attached homes. Interestingly, 73% of the county's housing units are multifamily units. The highest percentage of homes in the county is owned by white homeowners, followed by Asian Americans, then multiracial and combined groups. Renters last year paid an average of $2,500 and change per month, while the average 2024 single-family detached home assessed value was more than $1.23 million. There are more than 11,000 committed affordable housing units, also known as CAFs, located throughout Arlington, with more than 4,000 of these just along Columbia Pike alone. Next slide. Within the economic development realm, AED estimates that about 25% of businesses in the county are owned by people of color and or women. But there are still many entrepreneurship challenges for underrepresented groups due to the reasons here. With the elimination of the Minority Business Development Agency, many minority-owned businesses will be negatively impacted. AED has worked with this agency for years, and they were the main supporter of entrepreneurs of color. Literally tons of resources have been eliminated with just one recent executive order. Regarding underrepresentation of federal contracting, Black-owned businesses received only 1.54% of federal contract dollars last year, which highlights ongoing structural barriers in raising capital and meeting contract requirements. Now, I'll close by spotlighting just a few examples of ongoing initiatives and programs to provide some reassurance that Arlington County is doing our best to work towards addressing racial and other disparities. Next slide. In education, the school board adopted an equity policy in August of 2020 to reaffirm its commitment to several practices related to governance, educational, and workforce equity. 10 Arlington schools participate in a program called No Place for Hate, which is a national initiative to foster inclusiveness and belonging. APS also offers bias training for their staff. Through the Housing Arlington program and Affordable Housing Master Plan, the county promotes and implements both detailed housing analysis and the expansion of affordable housing countywide. Housing choice vouchers and housing grants also are available for qualifying residents. The Department of Human Services actively supports the following areas of need in our community. These include aging and disability services, behavioral health, children and family services, economic independence, and public health. The department's Destination 2027 project offers an extensive analysis of ongoing disparities related to health. If you have not yet seen this, I highly recommend it as an informative resource. Digital equity is a newer effort centered around improving broadband access, increasing training and technical support, and improving access to technology. In fact, there currently is a new digital equity initiative that will provide FY26 grant support for community partners to help address ongoing barriers to accessing and using technology. Next slide. In the realm of transportation, Arlington's Vision Zero initiative is a nationally recognized strategy designed to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. As part of this effort, the county regularly undertakes analysis of its safety projects and equity-based safety measures. Likewise, Arlington's public safety departments, including police, sheriff, and fire, conduct analyses of their policies and practices and remain committed to the principle that all individuals be treated with dignity and respect while safeguarding rights and protecting our diverse community. And lastly, here in AED, ongoing efforts include providing small business support and arts-focused grant opportunities, among many others. So thank you for your time and attention this morning, and I hope this provided some context for what you are about to hear.
Thank you. Quick question for you. Thank you, Cynthia,
Sure.
so much for that. You threw out a lot of really good data points, very interesting, a lot to digest. One that you had up on the last slide, I think it was, you estimate that 25% of business in Arlington is owned by people of color and or women. Do you have, just curious if we have any data on how that compares either to the nation, the country, is it higher or lower? And then if you were to take that 25%, how did that look 5 or 10 years ago? In other words, do you think we're on a positive trend or a negative trend? I'm just kind of curious for some context.
That's a really great question. Unfortunately, I do not have any answer to any of those, but I think that would definitely be something to research.
That'd be really interesting to
understand.
One of the challenges that we found, because a number of years ago, the county and the chamber and other groups were trying to find some data around this, issue is for very good non-discriminatory reasons. You don't have to register with that information. So how the county has often captured it is sometimes through grants and things like that of, including that as optional within the application. But again, because when you register a business for good reasons to prevent any sort of discrimination, you don't put those demographics. So all of that data is something the community always very much wants, and the Arlington community wants to use for very positive reasons, but it's just hard to access.
Thank you.
So during COVID, we were able to track, because we run federal programs, we have to track demographics for the types of companies we support. During COVID, we know that some businesses were more disadvantaged than others, were hit harder during that period of time. We received special funding that came from the federal government to specifically address supporting minority-owned businesses. And during that time, we saw a huge uptick in companies coming toward us for asking for help, for PPP, just for general, financial support, marketing help, all the things. And that since that funding subsided, we've now seen a decrease in the number of companies, minority-owned businesses that we support. During that period of time, we also increased to offering 6 languages of support. to address the biggest communities. So we know when it is supported, there's more help and more people are able to come to us, and when it's not.
Thank you.
For the county, they, about a year or two ago, they embarked upon a disparity study. They procured a contractor to do that work. I'm not sure the outcome of that, but a lot of that was going to provide some data to be able to understand the impacts and where we were. And they were doing that on their own. It was not that they had to do it. So I know Fairfax County had done a disparity study as well. So there may be some data to share from that.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate it. So it's 8:25. Janetta, I think we've allocated about 55 minutes or an hour for you, so we're good.
Thank you. All right, panelists, if you join me at the front. All right, so when I was first engaged in the conversation about having a conversation around equity on the Economic Development Commission, I was extremely excited about it. It's a topic that is extremely important to me. Obviously, we know we're all better if we're all thriving. And in a county as diverse as Arlington County is, there's a lot to do. Another reason that we're kind of having this conversation is, well, the county is very progressive, which is one of the things that I love about it. But as we saw from the data, there's still a lot to do. And each of us who are in this room, we have a sphere of influence that we operate within on a day-to-day basis. So the goal of today is really to equip you with data and information that you can use to take back to your sphere of influence to make change. And the conversation evolves beyond just economics. We're talking about education. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. We're going to be talking about housing, because we live in an interconnected ecosphere. And so one area affects them all. And so you'll hear from the panelists that we have up here today talking about those various areas, again, to equip you with information that you can take back into your communities and make us all better. So we'll start with introductions. If you start.
Sure. Will Mulligan, I'm the Membership Engagement Director at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also the Staff Liaison for Education and Workforce Development Committee.
Thank you, Will.
I'm Kimberly Gale. I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Washington Area Community Investment Fund, which is the CDFI.
Lourdes Morales with Arlington Economic Development with the Biz Lunch Program.
Samia Bird, Director of Community Planning, Housing and Development for Arlington County.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we'll start with questions, and then at the end, if you guys want to ask questions, you can. First question for all of the panelists. What's the role of equity in economic development, and how do the disparities in housing, education, entrepreneurship, and access to capital impact Arlington's economic growth?
I mean, I think, one of the important aspects of being more equitable and inclusive, I think, is the variety of ideas you get, right? I mean, you can't be a homogeneous society these days, and ideas come from all different people and backgrounds and things like that. So if you truly want to be a creative society, to find private sector solutions to the problems that you face, you have to include as many people as possible. You have to let them grow, let their ideas flourish. I mean, it just, and throughout my entire career, ideas come from all different people that, you engage with and you react with. So, anytime you exclude one population or one point of view from that, you're really retarding their organization and really limiting their ability to address the issues that they're facing. I mean, and that I think is the most important component to it, right? We're all in this together, and we all need to work together to solve our problems. And if we exclude community, or if we make access to the ecosystem harder for one community, we're never going to truly solve their problems. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind, is that, everyone's perspective is unique and important to the problem solving. And you have to have them part of the conversation in order to truly address the issues.
Thank you, Will.
For us, we work with entrepreneurs and small businesses every day who don't have traditional ability to get traditional banking and financing. And so for us, access to capital and providing that service for access to capital and technical assistance, equity, it just, fills that gap. They are the ones that are your local pizza shop or your local cleaners. And without that access to capital, they infuse the economy. I was reading something the other day, it says 30-something million, 33 million businesses, and 99% has less than 500 employees. Well, access to capital and laying that plan for it to give those businesses opportunities actually helps the economy grow and what we need to infuse the economy. So for us, it's an investment. It's not, handing someone anything. It's an investment for them to hire people and get people jobs and, provide for their families.
Thank you, Kimberly. Lourdes?
Yes, access to capital is a big one. And for us as well, provide tools and skills, but just not to grow their business, but make it sustainable. Because, we just don't want to help somebody to start now and then without having access to capital and other tools, education, everything that they need to succeed in a long run. So ensuring that they have everything that they need, education, tools, and access to capital as well, but also make them competitive for the ones that need to get contracts, for example, also provide access to networks. Because, without those networks, and we do it very well, like facilitating all those networks to incorporate them to work, towards getting potential clients, getting potential partners, investors, and provide all that network is equally important.
Thank you, Samia.
For me, it's that connection between people and place. So access to opportunity means access to wealth, means access to housing, means access to health, all of those things that are intertwined and interconnected. And the thing that always stands out to me as a background as a planner, but in the work that I do, is there was a book written by Heather McGhee several years ago, and it was called The Sum of Us. And one of the things she started out in the book saying was, who doesn't want nice things? And the nice things she was talking about were very simple, basic things that we probably all take for granted. Access to housing, access to healthcare, access to education. All of those things are intricately linked. And when we have opportunities and access to those things, we pour back into the economy, right? So when we are all connected, then there are places people want to experience life. Everybody wants to experience life in a positive way. And so thinking about that and the places that we create and how we look to make opportunities for people through the policies, through the plans, and then those plans get implemented through development that then spurs the places that we want to all experience. So for me, that's the connection.
Thank you. Thank you. I like what you said from the perspective of when we give from a place of abundance. So the more we have, the more we want to give. It's not about a handout, as you mentioned, Kimberly. It's about an investment. And the more we invest in our entire community, the more abundance we create for all. And out of that abundance, there's this overflow of giving that we all benefit from. So very perfectly stated. All right, next question for Samia and Will. From your perspective, what's the most concerning economic inequities in Arlington today? And what barriers and gaps still persist despite current efforts?
So it's actually the data that Cynthia shared with us. So while we know we're prosperous overall as a jurisdiction, within those areas of prosperity or opportunity, if you will, the gaps are much more disproportionate. So even within that, if you disaggregate the data, you'll still see that the gaps where people have, they have. But when they don't, they really do not. And so that continues to persist for us, that even though we see progress being made, we see African Americans, Latinos, and Hispanics, other populations increasingly receiving more. When they don't have those opportunities, they increasingly are experiencing less. And to me, I don't know how we are able to really address that gap until we start thinking a little bit differently about what that gap really is and really understand what the data is, where the populations are, and how we can provide opportunities in those areas. So
Do you mind if I kind of fill on that a little bit, just because I know what role you have before the one you're currently in?
Why do you think that is? What do you think in Arlington County specifically, just because of how diverse we are? My son went to the elementary school and it was 114 languages spoken. So hugely diverse county from that perspective. What do you think some of the gaps are in those specific demographics that you mentioned?
I will say, and this is with my planning background on and my land use background, in addition to the other role that you mentioned, is racialized zoning and economic zoning from the 20s that still persists, that causes the land use patterns, or that we see the land use and zoning patterns that we have today. And even with trying to change policy and trying to change those things, it's going to take time. So what you see is people in certain locations specifically that perhaps for various reasons over time, race, economics, other things, we've not poured investments into those areas. So we focused investment in just, and we see this in our land use patterns, right? We've said we want a specific type of development pattern to occur, and that development has occurred. But then what do we do around that to help uplift and support where people tend to be placed based on what they have access to, resources, et cetera? I think that that is an underlying contributing factor to why we still see that, in addition to just the social dynamic, right, that has continued to persist for generations and generations and generations.
Thank you, Samia. All right, Will.
Yes.
Question back
Well,
to you.
I think, well, with the Chamber's partnership with APS, I think that's one of the reasons, one of the things that we saw, right? So there are different resource levels at different schools in Arlington, even though we have an amazing school system. I'm not trying to knock it, but I think there are still disparities within that system. I think one of the things that the Chamber's done is we've been kind of very intentional in how we work with APS to make sure that we're focusing those efforts in those underserved schools and communities to make sure that those opportunities are more equalized. Like one of the things that we do every year is our Job Shadow Day. So where we take high school sophomores that are in the CTE program and try to pair them with a chamber member who is in the career that they say it 10th grade that they want to be in, which we all know sometimes changes. But so I think one of the things that we've done has been very intentional with how we work with APS on that to make sure that the students, we have an application process that the students have to go through for that. And one of the questions we ask is, have you had a job shadow opportunity already? And why do you want to do this? And I think one thing we do is we target the kids that have not had these opportunities previously or don't have these opportunities through their normal course of life to make sure that we're leveling the playing field, right? Because then we get a chance to have that student meet with a professional career that they're interested into. They can develop a relationship, be mentored by that person, hopefully, and develop a longer term relationship to break those cycles. You know, and that's, I think, something that we have been very intentional to do, because we realize that that's a real gap, because some kids just can have their dad introduce them to their friend, right, to do a job shadow day, and it's super easy for them. But, you know, there are kids in some of these neighborhoods that just their dad doesn't have those connections or mom doesn't have those connections. So we want to make sure that those opportunities are available no matter who you are or where you live. And I think sometimes, you know, communities just have to be more intentional with those opportunities and how they approach making those opportunities available. And the other thing we try to do is, you know, have a diverse group of people to participating in our programs, so the kids see people of all of Arlington offering these opportunities and involved in these careers. You know, it's not just, you know, like we work with minority-owned businesses to offer the job shadowing opportunity. So I think the other thing too, a lot of times, is if kids don't see somebody who is like them in these roles and in these opportunities, it becomes attitudinally even harder for them to see themselves in that role. You know, but I mean, like one employer that we've got, he's, you know, an African-American home builder. So, you know, they see that, wow, he owns his own home building company. I can do that too then. And I think that's also an important component to this that a lot of times are missed, that, you know, the mentors have to also mirror the experiences of the mentees for it to be real, because they have to see themselves in that role or it becomes an attitudinal barrier. And I think that's an important component to what we've tried to do And I think more programs need to try to do.
Absolutely. And I like that. I actually majored in psychology. And much of what we become is what we see modeled. So
Right.
you're modeling something for the youth in our county. And you also touched on something that we often think of investment from the perspective of economics, but there's also information investment and there's social investment, relationships. And often we don't realize how many doors are open just through the relationships and networks that we have. So you're providing that for the youth as well. So that is very awesome. All right, another question for all of the panelists. What policies or programs have been most effective in closing economic gaps, and where have we seen real progress? Let's start with you, Samia, and then work our way back down.
I mean, be transparent, there has been technical assistance grants that have been halted. Maybe about 6 months ago for us. And then there's some, issues right now that are delaying some fundings. The biggest thing I'll bring up that's so critical right now is the CDFI fund. The reduction in the funds that they'll provide. And just to give some context, there are over 1,400 CDFIs across the country. I was doing some research, about $6.3 billion in funding, tax credits and things were dispersed last year. And it can be very detrimental to the CDFI industry. People trying to figure it out now. They do have bipartisan support to kind of look at that and see how it can be realigned, because it can be very detrimental to infusing those funds out to the community. Out of those 1,400, they serve 85% are low income. You got 48% they serve women. 20-30% for rural communities. And so it would just be detrimental to the community if that fund does not come back in full speed. But the positive thing I will say for us is that private institutions and banking and corporations are stepping up and asking, where's the gap? How can we step in to help? Because access to capital is really crucial to these small businesses and all these communities to make sure that they continue to thrive. And we know that low income people of color, they're less privy to get access to capital. And if they don't have capital, businesses close. And so we don't want to get there. We want to stay, and we've been advocating and just encouraging our counterparts, and would encourage you all to kind of keep that in mind when it comes to supporting your entrepreneurs in your area.
Thank you. Do you mind, for people who might not be familiar with the concept, explaining what a CDFI is?
Yes, sure.
And the impact in Arlington County?
Yeah, the CDFI is a community development financial institution. We actually got certified to the CDFI fund, which was created through Congress, and since 1994. There's been a growth of CDFIs across the country. You'll have 30 or 40% that have a loan fund, which is what we do as the Washington Area Community Investment Fund. About 35 or maybe a little bit more are credit unions that is also CDFIs. Some do housing, some do small business lending. So there's a variety. The Opportunity Finance Network is a membership organization where you can look up, how many CDFIs there are across the country, but they're mission-aligned organizations. The whole purpose was to go into under-invested communities and to help entrepreneurs who can't get traditional financing. And you'll be surprised what they get turned down for. Like, you need a 700, but you had a 645 credit score, so you couldn't get a loan. And so for a few points, now I can't open my business or scale my business or a medical bill. That's just, you have to go and explain. And for us, we have different eligibility requirements that allow them to sit down with them and say, what happened here? What issues did you have? We can start you here. Build up your credit, maybe a small microloan to SBA micro lender, and then from there get you ready so that you can go to a bank create that relationship. And we don't want you to be a client forever, but what you want you to do is just to get that equity lens of just a start. And so that you can eventually grow and expand your business the way you need to. Just with that $50,000 loan, that's 75,000 helps me hire that person to be my receptionist or whoever. It helps it spark that growth. So they're all over the country. I think we all have a marketing branding issue because most people be like, what's the city in buy? That's because we don't have money in the budget for marketing, but we're here.
What's your trigger, right?
You know.
You guys sponsor our breakfast connection.
Yeah,
So you guys, we're helping get the word out. But
get the word out. So one of the reasons is getting out and spreading the word how there are alternatives if you can't get traditional banking financing.
Thank you. All right, so Mia, back to the question, what policies or programs have you seen being most effective?
So some of the policies that we are starting to see, at least on the land use and zoning side, and we embarked upon the same thing here in Arlington, were changes to zoning to try to provide additional opportunities on top of existing ones in single family zoning districts where, you know, there are more opportunities for different types of housing. Some changes also that we've started to try to see to implement ourselves has been incorporating the equity lens in the work that we do. So using data, disaggregating data so that we can make informed decisions about our plans, our policies. And then also one of the things that I'm really excited about has been these principles around equitable development and what does that really look like and what does that mean and how do you incorporate that at the ground level into the plans and the policies that we are making around land use in certain areas to ensure that when things are developed, the outcome we will see equity in the development as it unfolds. So I printed them out because there are several of them for the region. And Arlington adopted them last year. And so we're starting to apply them and incorporate them into our planning documents. And there were a couple of them that really focus on economic development and they're policy outcome based. So one of them is advanced economic opportunity and mobility. And that really speaks to promoting generational wealth building, local economic development and entrepreneur opportunities, including local minority businesses participating in publicly supported capital projects and real estate development, and working with the private sector to avoid and mitigate displacement of businesses during the construction of new projects, enhancing community serving establishments with capital and capacity building supports, and increasing career pathways for quality living wage jobs for people in all neighborhoods. And then there's another one about preventing displacement, and not only displacement of people, residential, but also businesses the same, and also focusing on honoring the history and the culture of places where we see them. So what I like to think about a lot of times is we're building places for people who exist in these jurisdictions and the localities, communities today, and also for the future. So honoring existing, but also focusing on the future. And so while we're starting to do that, the progress, though, is incremental because it relies on implementation through development and it relies on other things and other factors, but at least having it in there and having this conversation and people knowing what those principles are and those ideas and what the standards are, what the expectation is, I think will help to start to implement that work and we'll start to see it in the outcome. So even just having the conversations, I think, and being very direct and explicit still about what we're doing and why and who we're doing it for, I think is some of the progress that we're seeing, some of the things we're continuing to do.
Thank you, Samia. Lourdes,
Yeah. For us in this launch, one of the programs that has been really successful is the relaunch program, where we have been supporting businesses through technical assistance, and it can take place in different ways. Marketing support is key. People need to pivot now, and it started from the pandemic. They didn't have access to online selling. How do they do it? How do they use social media? But it's like giving them tools and also implementing, because it doesn't matter if you have a website, it won't sell by themselves. So I recorded a video and I look really good, but if I don't have any clients. But this program ensures that we work with them, develop content, but strategic content for them to have access to all those, either if it's marketing, or, they will need access to financing. You will hear that several times from Kim, from myself, from everybody who works in small businesses, because that's one of the biggest needs that our small businesses have. So it's how we are not giving them like a grant and money, but just preparing them for that. I also need to talk, of course, about my Biz Launch en Español program. It has been for almost 2 decades helping small business entrepreneurs to have access to resources, but it's not just in the terms of language, but it's also how do they have, understanding how they communicate, how do they want to have access to information. We have a calendar in place that my clients barely use. They like to call and, they need to say, but here's the link. Yeah, I saw it, but can you make an appointment for Wednesday at 11? It seems to be minor, but at the end, when you really want to impact a community, you need to understand from the ground, how do they work? How do they want to connect with you, And to me, one of the key components, especially under this climate, that I feel really proud is like the trust, because we cannot be out there trying to help people without that trust, and building that trust takes time. I've been here for almost 12 years. So, I have seen the beauty of creating that trust where people can come to me and feel in a safe space. And I'm not saying just for me, it's a program as overall, an institution where they know we are government, but we are different. We really want to help. We really want to, put our shoes on and walk with them, walk the walk. And we really mean that. So when we can see that, and we also, rely on different organizations when we are always helping, to create those connections, what is the CDFI? We will explain you. I say it's a bridge. It helps you to take you from here to there. This is the bank, and this is, you don't have any access to capital right now. So, that's how I explain. So for me, also being that connection with different organizations is priceless. And I just have 2 more. Within the Biz Launch en Español program, we also target different, we have a program called Manos a la Obra, where we partnered with Latino Economic Development Center and the libraries. And it was to help women who don't think by hand. So we provided the technical assistance from how to legally start your business, marketing, sales, broad commissioner revenue, of course. But also George Mason provided the space for them to sell their products at the end of the training. That was beautiful. It was out there at the plaza. I bought this necklace there, but just how empowering women to keep growing. And it was a program for almost 2 months, but that group's still together. So now they call each other, I have a space in this fair. Do you want to share my booth? So stuff like that. And we recently launched with a big investment group internally in AD and Latino Economic Development Center, also LaTech, that is providing access to networks and resources for Latino tech entrepreneurs. So yeah, that's some of the few that I can mention, and I kept going. But I think I need to share the stage.
Thank you, Lourdes. What I liked in your response is it really touched on the importance of connection and trust building for creating change, and also meeting people where they are. Often when we create programs, we like you said, I set up a website, come to me. But in many of our communities, it's best to go out to them and kind of understand how do they want to be talked to. All right, Will.
I think there's one very underutilized national, it's just the SWAM certification that small and minority-owned businesses can get. I think it's one that's greatly under-leveraged, because it's free to do, first off. It's a little bit of a process because you're dealing with the state, which is always a process. But once you get that certification, then you become on a list of preferred vendors for government and especially state and local government contracts. What a lot of people don't know is that within that, you get a grace period in your bids if you're a SWAM certified business. So you don't have to be the lowest bid to win if you're a SWAM certified business. They give you a 5 to 10% grace period. So what that really does is level that playing field, right? Because a lot of times those businesses are smaller, so they don't have the buying power, right? So they can't necessarily compete on a cost level with the big companies when they're competing for something. So that grace period really allows that small business that doesn't have the buying power yet or doesn't have that leverage yet, or being able to take a contract at a loss just to get the business. There is that kind of built into the system. And we've seen a couple members really take advantage of that and get business because they were SWAM certified. Because a lot of companies also, like Flash Gas and companies like that, actually have it built into their buying protocols that they're supposed to look at a SWAM business first. You know, so I think counseling those businesses that qualify to go through that process. I mean, yeah, it sounds annoying. It might take 180 days to do, but it's free. And all they do is ask basic questions. It's not like you have to, jump through that many hoops. But at the end of that, also, they're also enlightening members of the community that look for that also, right? We all want to support small local businesses. Well, being able to put that on your website or on your email signature that you're, a certified business, I think also gives you a degree of credibility where, the average consumer that, wants to support a small business, but also, wants to support the right small businesses. Seeing that kind of is that extra little puff out your chest moment, right? That I got certified, and I think that's something that's very successful in that aspect, that there are built-in components to make and help those businesses. It's just underutilized because I don't think a lot of people either A, know about it, or B, they fear that whole state process, right? Oh my God, they keep asking questions and this is taking forever. So they disengage with it. But I think you have to keep them focused on that end goal, right? And I think that's something that is already proving to be somewhat successful. And I think if more people utilized and leveraged it, they would see that success for themselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Next question. What has changed for you given the shift in policies and investments of the federal government over the past few months? And how are the communities that you work with being impacted? This question is for Kim and Lourdes.
Yeah, I shared a little light about the CDFI fund changes and how that can impact, and some technical assistance programs who have gone away. We had Enterprising Women of Color through the Minority Business Development Agency. We had a good run for about 3 years, and that ended last August. And so they're being affected and impacted from a federal level now. And they had capital readiness programs to help people get ready for capital. And so that's no longer available. I mean, I don't know if it's available, but it's being impacted right now. And so we're just trying to figure out alternatives to ways to making sure that whatever those gaps are, how can we fill them if there's no longer available through our private partners and things of that nature. We recently launched our Office of Women Initiatives. Guys, we had an event about a week or so ago, sold out within 2 hours of opening up because people want to hear. People are concerned about the landscape and how to maneuver the ecosystem. And it was really empowering to just let them know that, yeah, you're going to have to pivot. Here's some information and this is how we can help. We have a Certified Up program to allow and help people navigate through the certification process. And so some technical assistance programs that we have are delayed or falter, but, for us, it's like, find the Costco's, find the people who are going to support your endeavors and who are willing to continue, because small business is our business. We keep trucking along in terms of making sure that we have private partners or people. Our Women Initiative, we had a donor for the past 3 years because that's how important. I don't know who they are. They're anonymous, but they continue to support us every year. What we've seen have grown in the last 3 years is about 60% of our clients are women. And so that's something that we know, that we see the data. You got to look at the data and what support they need in terms of expanding their businesses, being the fastest growing, American women and things of that nature. We just have to keep in mind that, they all need technical assistance and tools, even if it isn't capital, just to navigate the small business ecosystem may not be easy for some. And knowing the right people to call and to get in the door, or how to subcontract with another bigger contract. Those are all learning skills that you got to kind of get your foot in there a good wet. So those are the things we've seen impacted. Like I said, the CDFA fund would be something detrimental. Sustainability, green space, EPA, I think you've all kind of heard some issues there. The CDFI fund and several other partners had an enormous amount of funding. We actually, beyond that, we didn't get any funds from there, but we have a program that help businesses that's in the green economy who support solar paneling, you name it. We have loan funds for that right now. But those dollars that were trickled down in those communities where they've had hurricanes and things are no longer going to get that money. And so that's a huge roadblock right now that they're working on to try to figure that out. But those are the impacts of the businesses that can support for clean energy, greenhouse gas fund reduction that can help those businesses thrive in that particular genre or industry. So that's another thing that we're kind of working through. But again, there are people who are eager to support those causes in other ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of challenges, everything that Kim mentioned, but in addition, when on the ground, talking with different type of clients, people have seen a decrease in revenue because they don't have the same clientele that they used to have, either if it's a restaurant, a beauty salon, you name it. But also, it's a lot of fear for them, for their employees, even, for everything that is happening. Some people are also afraid to come to the restaurant as they used to because they think something might happen. So it's people are not going as much as the mall. A client who is at the mall is like, Lourdes, what is happening with all this foot traffic that used to be here right now is not here. So it's a big decrease in revenue. Also, again, the mental health, talking with a client, I was saying, it's not me, but just seeing my employees worry every day that one of their relatives is not going to longer be there, or the mom of my kids won't be there when I come back home. So all the background that is there, and it's not, just like the money, it's a lot deeper than that. But at the same time, we have programs like the relaunch program, if they need to pivot because people who were working on getting federal contracting, now the contract that they were working with 2 or 3 more companies is not coming along. So what are they going to do? I have another client, she does communication, and now she was doing communications to campaigns in terms of health and, equity, and that's gone. And we were talking how she needs to pivot. And I think Kim mentioned that pivot, how people need to turn around and look for new opportunities. And programs like Relaunch is where it plays a crucial role, to make sure they can pivot, and we're there to help them, plus us, holding their hands as they move. For new businesses, I get calls like, Lourdes, do I start? But I have an IT number. We never ask for any type of identification or anything. But again, when you create that trust, people are like, do you think they can create an LLC? But they're like, are they going to share my information now? Do I start now or do I wait? Or another business that was trying to move to the United States, like, is this a good time? Or I waited already 2 years. Do you think I waited two more years? So it's all that unknown piece of it, but that's how we are even more, we are here to help. We're here to listen. We're here to look for resources, partnering with the chamber, with other nonprofit organizations to help them to find resources. We don't have that money, but LAC, Wake, if ADG has that money, we create those connections. Will was talking about certifying as a SWAN business. Chris Lay's back there, we send them to Chris. Hey, Chris, we have these clients. So even like creating those connections and helping them to move through and navigate the system, because a lot of time is like who I talk to for the SWAN certification, or, which codes do I select? Call Chris, but it's just like making that introduction, for clients. Yeah. to be there. So those are some of the challenges and how we're navigating it now as well.
Thank you, Lourdes. One thing you mentioned that hadn't dawned on me. So I'm on the board for Salvation Army, and we talk about the immigration piece. of the president's policies quite frequently as a result of that, because most of the demographic we serve is non-immigrants, I guess, to the US, non-English speakers and then immigrants to the United States. But you don't think about it from an employment or professional perspective. But obviously, if you're in a county with more than 100 languages spoken, those folks go to work, those folks own companies, and they're also equally as afraid in our community. And many of them, even if they're documented, they're still afraid because much of what's happening, because of what you look like, you could be affected by a raid, for instance. And so we don't often think about that piece of it. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's definitely important. All right, last question. How are we doing on time?
You have about like 8 minutes.
Okay. Last question, let's try to take maybe a minute apiece so we can open up for questions. How can local government, private sector, and community organizations more effectively drive equitable economic development? Obviously, you know, I'm an economic development commissioner, so lots of leaders in this room right now who have their own spheres of influence. So what can they do, whether through collaboration efforts, policy advocacy, or changes within their own organizations? Let's start with you, Will.
Like we kind of talked about it, how we kind of look at it, right? Be intentional in your efforts, right? You know, make sure that, you know, and I think one of the things that we've found out, you know, during the workforce efforts too, is that there are a lot of antiquated requirements in job descriptions that don't need to be there. You know, so reevaluate your organizations, right? I mean, like I worked in the hotel business for 15 years, you know, before this, and for some reason Hilton had it in their requirements that to be a front desk clerk, you had to have a bachelor's degree. I'm like, that's the most insane requirement in the history of mankind. You don't need a bachelor's degree to check people into a hotel. Sorry, you don't. So getting rid of those types of antiquated, you know, barrier creating requirements for a job is a step in the right direction, right? Because you're artificially rejecting talent that could be perfect for your organization simply because they don't check a box. You know, and I think, you know, by being more intentional in your efforts and making sure that you're turning over every stone when you're looking for those folks, and, you know, I think that's a step in the right direction. And I think that's something that, you know, people can do immediately, right? I mean, that self-evaluation, right? You know, we always talk about it in sports, right? Scout thyself. You know, and as organizations, I think everybody needs to scout thyself and see if are there things that we're doing unintentionally sometimes that are creating barriers to access or creating barriers to inclusion that, you know, we had the best intentions at the time, you know, but now might not be required or not required for that job. So let's, you know, open that up. And I think if people do a little bit more of that, I think, you know, again, as soon as you widen the scope of the folks that you're engaging with and looking at for opportunities to better your organizations are going to become, the stronger your organizations will become.
Thank you, Will. Perfectly stated.
Yeah, I was just add just collective strategies for a common goal. We partner, LED Stable, put you in a spot for a minute. Like for the past 3 years, we did a wealthy women financial management program that literally went through financial literacy for women, and we partnered so we could put our funds together because we could support more people to go through that program. It's been almost 3 years, I think, and it's going to be again to support those women. And so without the funding to do that, sometimes collectively we have to come together to do more impact. Another example I would give is a collective way we receive funding from a retailer. We got with someone who kind of maneuvered that to go through us, gave that person $500,000 to do a manufacturing space for beauty makers. And since that time that she's going to be opening pretty soon, is that we've been training beauty makers for the last few years to know the about manufacturing, supply chain management, how to make sure you get the right chemicals in your product, those kinds of things. Kind of get out of your kitchen, don't make your lipstick and your shea butter at home. But those kind of collaborative efforts actually brings things to life. And in the district, there will be a manufacturing space. So those type of collective partnerships allows you to bring a better impact if you all come together to think of different strategies of how to answer some of these challenges or gaps. Because you need more work to kind of do it and being more innovative in that approach. So those are just my thoughts, is that everyone can chime in to get a better outcome or output is probably the best solution probably right now. And to think of the strategy that's going to solve some of those gaps and some of those issues. It's going to take more than one organization. It's going to take multiple.
All right, Lourdes.
Collaboration is key there at the organization level, but also, private sector. We, as an example, I can think about the Hyatt Regency in Crystal City. They have been a key supporter for our work. Some examples of what they have done. I have a client, they let her use their kitchen. That is, she doesn't need to pay her kitchen. Who will do that? So she's using their kitchen, but they are also providing space for her to sell her products at the Hyatt. And it's how she had been testing her product. And now she got to the point that she will be pitching in one of our boot camps that we were offering in a few weeks to get that access to capital, because the winner will get the money so she can get to the next step. But the Hyatt was key to help her push that first phase, what is wonderful. Then, they have been collaborating with us for the brunch and business, where we highlight different communities and entrepreneurs within those communities. We had a wonderful event last October at the Hyatt Regency for Hispanic Heritage Month. We had 175 attendees, networking, all of us touched on the importance of networking at some point, just with colleagues, future clients, organizations. So we had them. We have 3 panelists with different backgrounds, where we were able to highlight them during the month, through blogs, social media, and connect them between them. And also sharing best practices with other small business owners, highlighted different organizations, the chamber was there, different organization, White Give, LEDC, that touches small businesses. And also we were able to have vendors, clients that we have worked with, to be able to sell their products during the event. And that's, the Hyatt provided the space, the food. Amazon came along as well and supported that event. So we brought an artist to create a community activity because again, our motivation is create that community, that people feel belong, that people feel supported. It's not just here it is this and you go but so create that sense of community. And we were able, is David Amoroso, that is very well known here in Arlington. He couldn't be more happy. We did a social media campaign with him and it blew out. And he's like, I'm selling like crazy as well. But, people painted their flags and we created a whole, so just being able to do that, type of, and we have the minority vendor coming up. That is this Thursday, where we will have, and the Hyatt is hosting it as well. Thanks to their support, we will have over 80 vendors as well, minority owned businesses selling their products for free. I mean, the space is for free, not the products. So, just some of the partnerships with organizations, but also the private sector can play a key role supporting the work that we do.
All right, Samia, close us out.
So I think a couple things that have already been said, being intentional, collaboration, partnership, and then also the word that you used earlier, pivot, like being able to navigate through the various challenges, the different environments, the different climate, all the different things that we're all experiencing. But 2 key things for me are, there's this concept called targeted universalism. And I kind of started with this, so I'm going to kind of close with this, is that, we all have common goals. A prosperous economy, housing, what are the key goals that we all find in common? And then what are the strategies within that based on need that are necessary so that everyone can achieve that common goal? So that might look different for different communities, different populations. How do we know what that looks like? We have tools. We have an equity lens. So I encourage us all to continue to use the equity lens and apply it internal to our organizations as well as external. We have data. We have a community vulnerability index map now that shows geographically where certain populations are more impacted based on different demographics. We also have our race and ethnicity dashboard and our census demographic dashboard. So if you are developing in the community, understand the community that you're developing in. Like, what is the population that your development will be located in, and who's there now and who may come? Who do we want to come if we want to uphold our values of diversity and equity and inclusion? And so apply all of those things so that we get the outcomes that we want, but based on the common goals that we have for the community. So.
Perfectly stated. Thank you, Samia. Thank you, panelists. Appreciate it. We have time for questions.
About a round of applause.
Are there any questions?
I've got a quick one. It's probably pretty easy. Will, you mentioned the SWAM certification. I've never heard of that before. How's that compared to like an 8A? Is it similar? Is it just curious from a?
It's completely different. So the
Okay.
SWAM stands for Small Women and Minority Owned Business.
Okay.
And it's a criteria that it's a universal criteria as far as percentage of ownership of the company. I think it's 51% has to be either women or minority identified minority group owned. It's a state certification. You submit the paperwork and the application to the state of Virginia. Some bureaucratic person scores it based on the application that you submitted. They ask for some additional information sometimes on finances and things like that. And then you're approved. And then you go into the state database for SWAM certified businesses. So when major corporations are doing their procurement, that's one of the requirements that they're supposed to check boxes and get bids from SWAM businesses. All counties in the state of Virginia are required to get a bid from at least one SWAM certified business for all of their procurements. So it can really just increase that access. And it's a free process. It takes up, unfortunately, about 6 months because it's the state of Virginia. That's how long things take. But it's definitely worthwhile to do for any business that would qualify for it.
Thank you.
The 8A is federal small business for mostly contracting.
Okay.
So different different.
And again, you get a 5 to 10% leeway in your bid even to be accepted. So you don't have to be the lowest bid to win. Because they are trying to encourage companies to do business with them. And we have a member that's actually taken advantage of it quite often and gotten a lot of business from being a SWAM certified business.
One shout out for the CDFI.
But no, it works.
So we also run a CDFI. The national default rate for CDFI loans is less than half of commercial lending rates.
Wow. We have time for a couple more questions.
I would just, hi, Meredith. Thank you so much for being here. As well as Cynthia, thank you for the data that you shared. I think echoing Nick's comments, I think we would also just be interested in keeping a strong eye on the trend rates that we're seeing, progress that we might have made, challenges that we should be monitoring for in the months and years to come. My just one observation and a question. Cynthia, going back to your presentation, Arlington's population currently is 59% white, 41% minority. Our student population in Arlington Public Schools is the inverse of that. And I think that tells you where we're going as a community. 41% white, 59% non-white. I have 4 children in APS schools and they're wonderful. They're rich. And so I think we as a commission understand where our community is going, where our businesses need to go, where our housing policies and other investment policies need to go too. My question is one of which, as we were having this discussion, I was looking up our county commissions and citizen groups. I don't know if there is one specifically devoted to equity, and perhaps Cynthia, you might know. I know we've got the Realizing Arlington's commitment to equity framework and program that you're involved in. But if the county board is looking for recommendations or ideas, reviews of their proposed policies, what would be the natural entity through which citizens and or professionals could provide feedback from an equity lens? I'm assuming that we do that here with the EDC, but is there a natural organization within the county that coordinates all of this, or is that a gap?
I know the county has a commission on women that one of our members is chair of, so I mean, there are some aspects of that, but I think it's more individual agencies all have that component within them.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one-stop shop for this. I think it's a responsibility of everybody. I don't think that's by accident. I think, by making it everybody's responsibility as far as countywide, every agency within the county has a component of that within it. I think they're sending that message that it just isn't this group's responsibility to make sure that we're doing this. It's everybody's responsibility to do this. And I think that's one of the things that, like coming earlier about how the chamber kind of approaches this is we're very intentional in our process to do so. I think that's part of it, right? I don't think you want one entity to be responsible for something like this, because then you get to the finger pointing, right? And you can push it off to somebody else and say, well, that's their responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. And I think it's important that you make sure it stays everybody's responsibility, that every single policy that you enact within your organization is intentional and has that end goal in mind. Because I think it's too easy just to say it's that person's responsibility and they're going to fix it. It's everybody's responsibility to fix. So I think it's intentional to do so.
And I think that's great. I think that's great. The question that I have is how do we come together and more formally sort of converge different ideas and approaches as, the county government's making decisions and or businesses are raising their hand and saying we would like more of X, Y, Z as we face potential pressures ahead.
I just was gonna add on. I was trying to stay in my current role. But you're making me come out of that.
By all means, please.
Well, it's correct. It was very intentional that there was not a commission specifically focusing on equity for the county. And I think the way to engage is through every commission, through the board, through Cynthia and the county manager's office to be able to share those ideas and partner when there are opportunities to be able to speak to different equities and everybody trying to apply the county's equity lens in that work and bringing things back through your commissions. There's certainly opportunities collaborate across commissions, across other nonprofit organizations with the county agencies to make sure those filters are being used and those things are being done collectively. And so bringing that back up to the county manager's office and to the board and through the commissions and through the staff departments and the staff working on these activities, as well as the community, I think has been kind of the push, that groundswell. And I don't know, there's opportunities for continued dialogues and partnership on race and equity. And we've had a lot of, I think, some of the organizations who represent some commissions, I think, have been partners through that. And I think we've been in a place of trying to rebuild that as well. So that might be another opportunity as we've looked to kind of move that from top down and bottom up and meet somewhere in the middle. The dialogues on race and equity, I don't know, Cynthia, if you want to speak to that, if that's going to be an opportunity also. Because we were trying to, there were 60 some odd organizations at one point, but trying to rebuild that coalition as well to be the ones who kind of steward as the information throughout the community through their commissions too.
No, I think, Meredith, that's an excellent question that you've raised. And it's making me think of things in a different way. And I think a lot of what our Office of Race is concentrated on at the moment, and I think historically, since this office has been in existence for the past 5 years, really has been internal facing. And so as Samia referenced, there is a community kind of offshoot that we are trying to enliven. It's called Dialogues on Race and Equity. And so the original cohort had about, what did you say, 60 or so different partner groups. Right now, the revamp of that program that we started last fall, we only have about 20 partner groups. So there's other organizations within the community, such as Challenging Racism and others, that are also providing this community support. So I think in my mind, that really is a gap, and that really is something that we could be doing more of as a county government, working with nonprofits, working with neighborhood associations, local organizations, the business community, to really build this partnership network, because that's very critical.
And I would add too, because I'm the co-chair for the Arlington Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. As we think about the needs of our individual constituencies, and especially because we have the advocacy role too with the county board, the extent to which we identify that there is a need or some goal that we have that potentially could impact some other group, or that affects, or a data input from that group would be helpful. Just intentionally building bridges with those commission chairs as well would go a long way, and partnering together to say, me and 3 other commissions are coming together to present this to the board would be a more powerful representation of kind of what the county needs. So I think we can all become more intentional about how we choose to partner with other commissions around the county as well.
But we kind of do that through our community action committee with the chamber as kind of our nonprofit committee. The chamber has about 100 nonprofit members that are in the chamber, and get them together through our community action committee like once a month. Just give them an opportunity to talk to each other and find common problems, common goals, and even best practices, right? Because, Betsy at Path Forward may have been through something that another organization now is dealing with. Well, by creating and facilitating those conversations, we may have cut their curve to deal with that in half, because just that communication line exists, right? And then what happens too from that and our government affairs committee, and working, I had a joint meeting with them in April, then we can stick John Musso on the county to try and solve those problems and to kind of figure out a way to help address those. And I think that's one of those things about collaboration, right? And opening up those lines of communication. I think sometimes people get way too siloed.
Amen.
Right? And they think, oh, nobody else is dealing with this. Or, I think that's something we learned during the pandemic, right? We're not siloed. We all have, and by having those opportunities to talk and to collaborate together, I think is the first biggest step to get people out of their silos, to see, our organization is dealing with this. You think you're alone, and you're not. I mean, that's one of the things that we found. During our Women in Business Summit that we had in March, we had a mental health panel. And I think that was one of the big takeaways from that in talking to the people that were in that, panel discussion, was the fact that it was just really nice to know I'm not alone. And I think that's the first step in any type of solution to those problems, is understanding that you're not alone, and, by joining organizations and working with other entities, I think that's where you're going to start to see that real effective change.
Thank you, Will. And thank you, Janetta and the panel. Appreciate your time today. So it's 9:29, just really quick here. Commissioner Brad Mason had to leave a little bit early, but just wanted to read a couple of quick sentences from his testimony to the board last month. This is related obviously to commercial vacancy working group. We tried to focus on a couple things that are continuation of the effort for the last year and a half. So I'm just going to read it really quick. However, we must underscore that the CMRI remains the EDC's foremost priority. CMRI is central to addressing the structural challenges facing a significant portion of Arlington County's tax base. The county's ongoing commitment to adaptive reuse policies and streamlined redevelopment process is critical to revitalizing our commercial corridors. Therefore, we strongly advise the board to maintain and, where possible, expand support for CMRI-related initiatives. Then we asked the county board to evaluate the reduction of one principal planner position within CPHD. Our understanding is that filling this position would provide additional capacity to advance our CMRI initiatives. The county has made great progress, but there's still significant work to be done. We cannot afford to lose momentum. We touched on a couple other things as well, including the proposed increased fees. And we know that there are some other groups that, echoed those feelings as well. So again, I believe the budget's being adopted this week. Okay. Any old business? Any new business? Okay, well, it's 9:29. Thanks for your time today.
So.